at this, but the Australian Bureau of Statistics has looked at the tax we pay per person in the different states. And the number one taxpayers in Australia are Victorians, that's us, $6,348 per person. New South Wales, second highest taxing state, $6,016 per person, so about $330 less. Then Western Australia, and on it goes. And it made me think, all right, so we've got the highest state debt and we pay more tax per head of population than any other state. What is happening with the money? And are we getting the results from this high taxation and this high level of government borrowing? Are we getting things or assets or whatever that will make us all better off in the future? Our next guest is Chief Economist and Co-founder of Macro Business, Leith Van Onselen. Good morning.
Yeah, g'day, Tom. How are you?
Well, I'm good. I mean, I always thought I paid too much tax, and now I'm certain about it.
Yeah, that's right, mate. Unfortunately, yes, us Victorians are getting absolutely squeezed pretty hard by taxes. And as you mentioned earlier, we've also got the highest state debt in the country. It's not a great picture.
So have we got much to show for it? Like, I know that, we will eventually have the Cross-City Rail Tunnel, the Westgate Tunnel, the North East Link, and given the news over the weekend about the inability to get out of the Suburban Rail Loop contract, we're going to have to build that as well. Will all these higher taxes and all this borrowing, will we be better off collectively in the medium to long-term future with all this infrastructure that's been built?
Well, unfortunately, we're sort of like a dog chasing its tail. So I put Victoria's problems down to two issues. So first of all, we've experienced the fastest population growth in the country this century. So Melbourne's population's grown by about 2 million people this century alone. That's driven obviously by mass immigration. And Melbourne's population is actually projected to grow by another 3.5 million people in 32 years. So we're going to be 9 million by 2056. So unfortunately, we can never build enough infrastructure to keep up with this massive population growth. And that's why our living standards keep sliding backwards.
Are we really going to 9 million people in the next 3 decades?
Yeah, absolutely. That is the Victorian government's official projection. So another 3.5. So just think about this. It took Melbourne 170 years roughly to get to 3.5 million at the turn of the century, and we're supposed to add that again in the next 32 years. So that is just an impossible task, and as a result, our living standards are going to keep going backwards. Infrastructure is never going to keep up. We're going to have more congestion and obviously more housing problems.
So is the solution to our problems not more taxes, more borrowing, and more infrastructure, but just maybe fewer people?
Absolutely, it is. I mean, the Victorian government should be, raising the white flag to the feds and saying slow immigration down drastically because we cannot keep up. And it should also be demanding more money from the federal government because, unfortunately, the feds collect 80% of the tax revenue. They get all the benefits from immigration, but the states wear the costs. And the Victorian government should team up with the New South Wales government and say slow immigration and pay us $50,000 per new resident that lands in our state to pay for our infrastructure and everything else.
So you're saying, say to the feds, you issue all the visas, so every person that comes here, you have to give us 50 grand because we've got to build, hospitals and schools and roads and everything else that they need.
Absolutely. Otherwise, our living standards are going to keep declining. We're going to have more crowded schools, hospitals, infrastructure and everything else.
How much is the government's or was the government's response to the pandemic to blame? Like, we had the most heavy-handed response, lockdowns. We all know about that from during 2020 and 2021. I think we collectively spent 9 or 10 months being locked down, or 270-something days. I mean, because the state government locked us down so much, and therefore had to borrow a lot of money to try and give us money because we couldn't go to work or anything, is that one of the reasons our debt is so high?
Yeah. So certainly. So this is the other side of the equation. It's mismanagement. So obviously we had the lockdowns, which added to debt, but also Victoria's had the biggest blowout in public servants. So we've had the fastest growth in, bureaucrats in the country. We've obviously seen blowouts in just about every single infrastructure project. We've also handed out money for nothing to cancel the East-West Link, the Commonwealth Games, and potentially the Suburban Rail Loop. Yeah. So there has been also financial mismanagement from top to bottom from the state government, and that's just compounded the pressures from the mass population growth.
And final question, just going back to the state government's debt, which in the next few years will approach $200 billion. Is there any way out of it? Because unfortunately, you're saying we need to reduce our population growth, but the impression I get from the government is actually they want to increase the population growth even more because they sort of hope to grow, the state to the point where the debt won't matter so much. Is there any other choice with that debt? Are there assets left to sell, or can we just look forward to even more taxes, or what?
Well, unfortunately, there's no easy way out. We've sold off just about everything that's not bolted down, and with the population projected to grow by 3.5 million people in the next 30 odd years, we're going to need to build a heck of a lot of infrastructure and everything else, which means more debt and more borrowing.
Righto. Well, on that cheery note, we'll say goodbye. Thank you for your time. Lee Van Onselen there, Chief Economist and Co-founder of Macro Business. I always like to think, if you could be dictator for a day, well, not a day, you need to be dictator for about a decade to fix up Victoria, that there are things you could do. And when you've got too much debt, and we do, and our debt is predicted to keep going up, it's not going to stop. There are three things. More taxes. Well, we already have more taxes. Less spending. Well, good luck trying to rein in the public service and the CFMEU and so forth, but that's what we need to do. And then there's selling of assets. And I mentioned at the start of the program that I'm pretty sure the Epping fruit and veg market is being tarted up for sale. That's why the government's putting up the rent, because it will make it a more attractive asset to a potential buyer, even though that rent is at the expense of the fruit and veg wholesalers who are there. None of these options is great. All of them have different sorts of pain associated with them. 133